On a quiet Wednesday evening in Willow Harbor, a small coastal town on the eastern side of Maryland, the sun dipped low behind the water. Waves rolled in slow, steady breaths. Families finished dinner, teenagers biked down Main Street, and porch lights blinked on one by one. Nothing ever seemed extraordinary here. Ordinary days felt like they stretched forever. But that night, something was happening on the far end of the old wooden pier, something that didn't belong in this peaceful little town. At the edge of the pier stood a man in a charcoal gray suit, his polished shoes inches from the black water below. His hands shook slightly. The wind tugged at his tie. His eyes were empty, hollow, as if he had already left the world hours ago. His name was Jonathan Hale, one of America's most famous self-made billionaires. The news often called him brilliant, ruthless, unstoppable. People said he had everything: a private jet, a mansion in New York, companies worth more than some countries. Nobody talked about what he lost along the way. Tonight, he was ready to leave it all behind. He whispered to the ocean, "I'm sorry, Emily. I'm so sorry," as if apologizing to someone who wasn't there anymore. A few blocks away, across from a corner store that struggled to stay open, lived Talia Brooks, a 14-year-old black girl with headphones always around her neck and a sketchbook tucked under her arm. Everyone in Willow Harbor knew her. She was the kind of kid who held doors open for strangers, who carried groceries for her elderly neighbor, who sat with new students at lunch so they wouldn't eat alone. Life hadn't been kind to Talia, but she somehow stayed gentle. Her mother, Denise, worked double shifts at the town's hospital. Her father, Staff Sergeant Marcus Brooks, had passed away 2 years ago after complications from an injury he received while deployed. They never really healed from it. Her mom rarely talked about him. The pain lived too close to the surface. Talia drew him every night, trying to remember every detail: his smile, the freckles on his cheeks, the way he held her hand so firmly. Tonight, Talia walked home from tutoring younger kids at the community center. As she passed by the beach, she noticed the faint shape of someone standing at the pier's edge. It was late, too late for anyone to just be enjoying the view. Something about the way he stood froze her in place. She whispered, "That don't look right." Talia had learned to trust her instincts. Her dad taught her that. "If something feels wrong, baby, don't ignore it," he used to say. "Some people's lives depend on us paying attention." She walked toward the pier slowly at first, then faster when she saw him take off his watch and place it gently beside him. A cold wave of fear rushed through her. "Sir?" she called out, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry through the wind. "Hey, are you okay?" Jonathan jolted. He wasn't expecting anyone. He turned around slightly, just enough to see her small figure approaching. "It's fine," he muttered. "Just go home. You shouldn't be out here." But Talia didn't move back. She stepped onto the pier, her heart pounding. "I can't go home if you're about to do something you can't undo." Jonathan closed his eyes. "Kid, you don't understand. I've lost everything that actually mattered." Talia swallowed hard and walked closer, stopping a few feet away from him. "Then tell me. Maybe I'll understand more than you think." It wasn't the words that reached him, it was her voice. Soft, scared, brave, and familiar in some way he couldn't name. Jonathan stared ahead at the dark water. "My daughter. She was 15. Sweetest girl in the world. And she..." His next words broke apart. "She died 3 years ago. I wasn't there. I missed her last call. I was in a board meeting, arguing about numbers, while my little girl left the world." Talia's chest tightened. She couldn't breathe for a moment. 3 years ago. A daughter. 15. "So now," Jonathan whispered, "I don't see the point of any of this. The money. The deals. The headlines. I'd give everything, just to hear her voice again." He leaned forward slightly. Talia gasped. "Please don't." Jonathan didn't speak. So she said the only thing she could think of. "My dad died too." Jonathan froze. He was in the army, she continued, voice cracking. Something happened when he was overseas. They brought him home, but he didn't make it. I was 12. And I wanted to stop breathing too. I felt like my whole world was gone. I felt like God forgot about us. Jonathan slowly looked back at her, really looked at her, for the first time. Talia wiped her eyes. But my daddy always told me one thing. He said, Talia, your life ain't just yours. It belongs to the people you're supposed to help one day. I didn't understand him then, but I think I do now. She took one careful step closer. Maybe you're supposed to help somebody too. Maybe you're supposed to live for the people who can't anymore. For the daughter you miss. Her voice shook with truth. I know it hurts, sir. I know it feels like breathing is the hardest thing in the world. But you don't get to quit tonight. Not here. Not like this. Not when someone like me still needs you alive. Jonathan stared at her as tears filled his eyes for the first time in years. Why would you need someone like me? He choked. And Talia said the sentence that stopped him cold, the sentence that reached into the darkest corner of his despair and lit a candle. Because you remind me of what my dad would have become, if he had a little more time. Jonathan's body shook. He dropped to his knees on the wet wood, sobbing uncontrollably. Talia rushed forward and wrapped her arms around him, even though she barely reached his shoulders. Jonathan held on to her like a drowning man finally grabbing a lifeline. They stayed like that for a long time, the billionaire and the fatherless girl, two broken souls on a quiet pier, holding each other together. When Jonathan finally pulled back, he whispered, "What's your name?" "Talia," she said gently. "Talia," he repeated, as if memorizing it. He stood slowly, shaky but breathing again. "You saved my life tonight." Talia gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe you saved mine too." They walked off the pier together, one step at a time, toward a future neither of them expected, but both desperately needed. As they reached the street, Jonathan asked, "Can I walk you home?" Talia shrugged shyly. "Yeah, I'd like that." And under the broken streetlights of Willow Harbor, the two began a fragile journey that would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Willow Harbor woke up gently, the way small towns do. Fishermen rolled out their boats before sunrise, dogs barked at passing cars, and old men gathered outside the diner drinking coffee like it was medicine. But two people started their morning differently. Jonathan Hale, billionaire. Talia Brooks, 14-year-old girl with a brave heart and a broken one. Both silently thinking about the moment that stitched their lives together on the pier. Talia didn't tell her mother where she'd been. Denise had come home exhausted around 1 a.m., the hospital badge still clipped to her scrubs. She kissed Talia's forehead and whispered, "Baby, we'll be fine. We always figure it out." Then she collapsed on the couch and fell asleep before her head even settled. Talia covered her with a blanket and stared at her mom for a long time. She wished she could tell her everything, but some things were too heavy to carry out loud. Across town, Jonathan sat alone at the local inn where he'd checked in anonymously. He hadn't slept. He stared at the ocean through the window as if it owed him answers. His mind kept replaying Talia's words. "You remind me of what my dad would have become, if he had a little more time." Nobody had spoken to him with that kind of honesty in years. His world was full of assistants, executives, and shareholders, people who were afraid to tell him the truth. But this girl, this child, saw right through his armor. He needed to see her again. He needed to thank her, properly. By noon, he stepped out into the town square, dressed more simply this time. Dark jeans, a sweater, no tie. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to find the girl who stopped him from disappearing. He wasn't sure where she lived, but he remembered her saying she'd been tutoring kids. So he walked toward the community center, hoping that was a good place to start. Talia, meanwhile, was having a complicated day. At school, she tried focusing on her math quiz, but the numbers blurred. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the pier, to the tall man with tired eyes, to the moment she felt her dad's presence again. She replayed their conversation and wondered if he meant it, when he said she saved him. During lunch, she sat alone on the field bleachers, sketchbook open. She drew her father again, but this time something strange happened. Her pencil moved differently. It softened around the edges. It didn't draw the image of a hero in uniform. It drew a man sitting on a pier, holding onto a girl like she was the last piece of hope he had left. She stared at the drawing and whispered, "Daddy, did I do the right thing?" A warm breeze passed over her cheek, the kind that felt like a gentle hand. She closed her eyes, letting herself believe it was him. When school ended, she walked toward the community center. She had promised the little kids she'd help them with reading again that afternoon. She might have been hurting, but she'd never let a promise slide, not after losing someone who always kept his word. Inside, the sound of crayons scraping paper filled the air. Kids ran around in socks, chasing each other, laughing like the world outside didn't exist. "Talia!" little Jessie yelled, running up to her. "Can you help me spell elephant again? I keep forgetting where the ph goes." Talia giggled softly. "You remember it goes elephant. It sounds like an F. But it ain't." Jessie nodded like he just learned the secret to life. As she sat on the floor with him, she didn't see Jonathan walk through the double doors. He hesitated when he spotted her, knees bent, smiling patiently as she helped a child hold a marker correctly. It was the first real smile he'd seen on anyone in a long time. Watching her, he felt something warm open in his chest. Not romantic. Not paternal. Something deeper, a sense that life wasn't over yet. That there were still reasons to stay. He cleared his throat lightly. Talia froze. She knew that voice. She turned slowly and saw him standing there, hands in his pockets, looking lost and grateful all at once. "Hey," she whispered. Jonathan offered a small smile. "Hi, Talia. I hope I'm not interrupting." Jessie looked between them. "Is that your dad?" Talia's breath caught. "No, he's just someone I know." Jonathan knelt down a little to match Jessie's height. "And I can't draw elephants either. So you're already ahead of me," he said kindly. Jessie giggled and ran off to brag to his friends that he met a grown-up who couldn't draw. Talia stood and wiped her hands on her jeans. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. Jonathan shook his head once but smiled. "I'm alive. That's because of you." She didn't know what to say. He looked around the center, taking in the peeling paint, the broken vending machine, the outdated computers. "You come here every day after school?" "Most days," she said. "Kids need help. Their parents are working. Some don't speak English well. I'm good at, explaining things." Jonathan nodded thoughtfully. "Do you like it?" Talia shrugged. "I love it. But the center might close next year. Not enough funding." Jonathan's face softened. "I see." He wasn't a man used to feeling powerless. Yet last night, a child saved his life. Not money, not doctors, not fame. A girl with a heart big enough for two broken souls. He wanted to repay her. But something told him money wasn't what she needed. Not first. Instead, he asked gently, "Can we talk? Maybe outside." Talia hesitated. Is something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "Nothing's wrong. I just want to understand the girl who saved my life." Her cheeks warmed. She nodded. They sat on the concrete steps outside the center. Kids played behind them. A soccer ball bounced off the railing. Somewhere nearby, someone grilled hot dogs for an after-school fundraiser. Jonathan watched the street in front of them. "I want to apologize," he said quietly. "For last night. For scaring you." "You don't gotta apologize," Talia said. "Hurt people don't think straight." He nodded slowly. "Still, you deserved better than to stumble into something like that. You're just a kid." Talia hugged her knees. "I'm not really just a kid anymore. Jonathan looked at her as if he understood every hidden meaning. No. I suppose you're not. A silence settled over them, gentle but heavy. Finally, Jonathan asked, was he a good man? Talia smiled, soft, sad, real. The best. He never broke a promise. He always said he'd protect me. And he did, even when he wasn't here no more. Jonathan swallowed hard. I wasn't a good father. I tried. I thought giving my daughter everything she wanted, money, trips, gifts, was enough. But I wasn't there. I missed birthdays, school plays, nights when she needed someone to talk to. I missed her last phone call. He pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. I can't forgive myself. Talia spoke softly. Maybe she forgave you already. He looked at her, eyes wet. How could she? My dad used to say that loving someone means understanding they're human. Humans mess up. Parents make mistakes. But love don't disappear that easy. Jonathan blinked slowly. Your father sounded wise. He was, she whispered. He didn't have money. He didn't have fancy things. But he had us. That's what mattered. Her voice trembled, just a little. My mom cries at night sometimes, she continued. She thinks I don't hear her, but I do. She's scared all the time. Bills. Work. Losing our house. She misses my dad but doesn't say it because she thinks she gotta be strong for me. Jonathan listened, every word sinking deep. I try to help the kids here because it makes me feel like my dad's still with me. Like I'm carrying something he left behind. Jonathan stared at her, not like she was a child, but like she was a teacher he wished he'd had long ago. Talia, if I told you I wanted to do something good, something meaningful, what would you say I should do? She thought carefully before answering. Don't give money, she said. Not first. People forget money quicker than kindness. Jonathan nodded, surprised. Then, what should I give? He asked quietly. Time, she said. Be there for someone. Really be there. He breathed in slowly, as if the words themselves were medicine. Then Talia looked at him with eyes too wise for her age. Sir, don't try to fix the world in one day. Just fix one thing. Start with one. Jonathan's throat tightened. One thing. One life. One chance. He whispered, maybe I can start by helping this place. He motioned toward the community center. Talia blinked. Help how? We'll talk about it, he said with a gentle smile. But I want you to know something first. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his daughter's bracelet, a small silver band with tiny music notes engraved into it. This belonged to my daughter. She wore it every day. His voice softened. I want you to have it. Talia shook her head quickly. No, I can't take that. Jonathan placed it gently in her palm. You can. Because last night, I think she sent you to me. And I think she'd want someone like you to carry a little piece of her. Talia stared at the bracelet, tears filling her eyes. It's too important, she whispered. So are you, he replied. For the first time in years, Jonathan felt something break inside. Not in a painful way, but in a way that let the light through. I'm staying in this town for a while, he said. If you're okay with that. Talia nodded slowly. Yeah, I think that's okay. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man trying to put himself back together. Not with money, not with power, but with purpose. And Jonathan looked at her and saw something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But life wasn't done testing them yet. When Talia got home, she found her mom sitting at the kitchen table, face buried in her hands, bills scattered around her like fallen leaves. Denise looked up with swollen eyes. Talia, baby, the landlord gave us a notice. Her voice cracked. We're 3 months behind. We don't have more time. The world dropped from under Talia's feet. She sat beside her mother and held her tight as both of them trembled with fear they couldn't afford to speak. Upstairs, the silver bracelet glowed faintly in Talia's hand like a tiny promise. Or a warning. That night, Talia barely slept. She lay awake listening to her mother quietly cry behind the thin bedroom wall. The sound broke her heart in ways she couldn't explain. Each sob felt like it carved a new wound inside her. The silver bracelet rested on her nightstand. She kept glancing at it, wondering if she should tell Jonathan what happened. But what if he thought they were only being kind to him because he was rich? What if he felt used? Or worse, what if he left the town again? By morning, her stomach ached with the weight of everything. Denise tried to act normal, packing her lunch, brushing her hair, forcing a smile that cracked at the edges. "You ready for school, sweetheart?" Talia handed her the lunchbox silently. Her mom knelt and held her face in both hands. "Listen, baby. I'm going to fix this. I just need time." But they didn't have time. And Talia knew it. Jonathan, that same morning, was feeling something strange. Something unfamiliar. Hope. He had spent half the night reading through files about the community center, the town, and the families living here. He wasn't looking for business opportunities. He was looking for ways to repair the world around him, piece by piece. He circled photos on his tablet. Kids playing basketball with a broken hoop, volunteers handing out food, teachers tutoring at folding tables. And then he paused at a photo of Talia on the center's website, her eyes bright, holding two little kids' hands as if she existed just to keep people safe. He whispered, "Start with one thing." Her words had been echoing in his mind ever since she said them. He called his private assistant in New York, but this time his voice sounded different. "Carla? I need to organize a meeting with the mayor of Willow Harbor and the director of the community center. Today." Carla hesitated. "Sir, are you feeling better?" he said truthfully. "But I need to do something meaningful." By 11 a.m., Jonathan stood outside the community center with two town officials. He didn't tell them he was a billionaire at first. He didn't want special treatment. He wanted honesty. But once he told them who he was, the director nearly fainted. "You want to help?" "Help how?" she asked shakily. Jonathan smiled. "Let's start with keeping your doors open next year." The director covered her mouth with both hands as tears filled her eyes. "Sir, you don't understand. We've been trying to save this place for years." Jonathan nodded. "I understand." Behind them, a familiar voice called out, "You're back." Talia stood at the gate, backpack slung over one shoulder, worry lines on her forehead. Jonathan turned to her with a warm smile. "I meant it when I said I was staying." She looked at the mayor, the director, the papers in Jonathan's hand. "What's going on?" Jonathan motioned her over. "I'm helping the community center. We're making sure no kid has to lose this place." Her eyes widened. "For real?" He nodded. "For real." She exhaled softly. "My dad would've liked you." Jonathan swallowed the lump forming in his throat. "I hope so." They talked for a while, about after-school programs, tutoring spaces, and even adding grief counseling for kids who lost family members. Talia didn't speak much, but Jonathan noticed how her face softened every time the director mentioned helping other children. But underneath it all, he sensed something else, a quiet sadness she was hiding. He didn't push. Not yet. The breaking point arrived 2 days later. After school, Talia skipped the community center and walked straight home. Jonathan stopped by to drop off new reading supplies for the program and noticed she wasn't there. Jesse tugged on his sleeve. "Talia didn't come today." She looked sad at lunch. Sad. The word struck him harder than it should have. Jonathan thanked Jesse, left the center, and walked through town until he reached the row of worn apartments he guessed she lived in. He hesitated only a moment before climbing the front steps. He knocked gently. The door opened a crack. Denise stood on the other side, tired, stressed, eyes puffy. She looked at Jonathan with suspicion. Can I help you? Jonathan removed his cap. Ma'am, I'm a friend of Talia's. Her posture softened slightly, but she still guarded herself. She's resting. It's been a long week. Jonathan nodded politely. Is everything all right? She hesitated. Her lips pressed tightly together. Jonathan recognized the expression. It was the look of someone drowning silently. We're fine, she lied. Jonathan took a breath. Mrs. Brooks. I'd never disrespect your privacy. He struggled for a second. Your daughter helped me on a night when I needed someone. I owe her my life. If there's something she's struggling with, I want to help. Denise's eyes shimmered. Her voice cracked, just barely. I can't accept help from strangers. Jonathan nodded once. I understand. He turned to leave. And that's when Talia appeared behind her mother, pale and tired, hugging that silver bracelet like it was a life raft. Mom, it's him, she whispered. Denise sighed heavily and stepped aside. Come in. Inside the small apartment, Jonathan saw everything. The peeling wallpaper. The empty pantry shelf. The medical bills stacked neatly on the counter. The single picture frame of Talia's father placed like a shrine. Talia sat on the couch. Jonathan sat across from her, choosing the wooden chair with the loose leg because he didn't want to look like he didn't belong there. After a moment, he said softly, I noticed you didn't come to the center. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Talia looked down. Her voice came out small. We're being evicted. Jonathan's chest tightened. Denise rubbed her forehead. I told her not to say that. But it's true, Talia whispered. Mom works non-stop. I help where I can. But it ain't enough. We don't have money. We barely have food. And the landlord don't care. Jonathan exhaled slowly, his hands trembling slightly. He had spent years solving billion-dollar problems, but somehow this, one family losing their home, felt heavier than everything he'd ever handled. Mrs. Brooks, he said gently, would you allow me to help you? But Denise shook her head. No. I won't take money from anyone. I won't raise my daughter to rely on someone else's pockets. Jonathan bowed his head respectfully. I understand. You're a strong woman. A good mother. That simple sentence broke something inside her. Her voice cracked. I'm trying, sir. I'm trying so hard. You are, he said softly. But even the strongest people deserve help. Silence filled the room. Talia stared at Jonathan with worried eyes. You're gonna leave now, aren't you? Everyone leaves when things get hard. Jonathan felt something inside him collapse. No, he said firmly. I'm not leaving. He leaned forward, looked directly into Talia's eyes, and said the words she needed most. I have walked away from things that mattered before. It destroyed me. I won't do it again. Not with you. Not with your mom. Talia's lips trembled. Jonathan continued slowly, carefully. Your mother won't accept money. So I won't offer money. Denise looked up, confused. Jonathan took a deep breath. Instead, I'd like to hire her. What? Denise whispered. I'm starting a foundation here in Willow Harbor, he explained. A foundation to support families, rebuild community spaces, and fund education programs. I need someone strong, compassionate, and trustworthy to run the administrative side. Someone rooted in this community. Someone who understands struggle. Denise's eyes widened. But I don't have fancy skills. You have exactly the skills I need, Jonathan said gently. Leadership, organization, heart, and love for the people here. Talia's jaw dropped in disbelief. Jonathan turned to her. And as for you, I need someone to design the kids' room in the center. You're the best artist I've met. Would you help me with that? Talia blinked hard as tears fell silently down her cheeks. Are you serious? She whispered. Yes, he said, smiling softly. I'm serious. Denise finally broke down then. All the fear, the pressure, the exhaustion, everything poured out of her in tears she'd held back for years. Jonathan quietly walked to her, kneeling beside her chair. You don't have to do this alone anymore. She sobbed into her hands, and after a moment she reached out and squeezed his hand with gratitude too deep to speak. Talia slid off the couch and wrapped her arms around both of them, trembling with relief. And in that tiny living room, 3 broken hearts finally found a little piece of healing. A month later, Willow Harbor changed forever. The community center reopened with new classrooms, fresh paint, and updated books. Denise managed the foundation office with confidence she never knew she had. The town started calling her the woman who saved the kids' center, even though she always said Jonathan deserved the praise. Talia's mural, bright, colorful, full of hope, covered an entire wall. Kids stood in front of it every day, pointing at the characters she drew and smiling as if they'd stepped into a dream. Jonathan spent almost every afternoon at the center, reading to kids, fixing broken shelves, helping with homework. He felt alive again. Human again. Like his daughter hadn't left him, just changed where she lived. One evening after closing, Jonathan and Talia walked back to the pier where they first met. The sun shimmered over the water in gold and pink. Talia leaned on the railing, holding the bracelet. Jonathan looked out at the waves. You know, he said softly, I used to think my life ended the day my daughter died. What do you think now? Talia asked. He glanced at her, eyes warm and steady. I think life gives us second chances through the people we meet. Sometimes, through the people who save us. Talia smiled gently. My dad always said we're meant to help somebody. Maybe we were meant to help you. And maybe, Jonathan said, you were meant to lead me back to myself. Talia slipped the bracelet on her wrist. It fit perfectly. Do you think she'd be proud of you? She asked. Jonathan's voice shook. I hope so. And I hope your father is proud of you too. Talia looked out at the ocean and whispered, I think he is. Jonathan breathed in the soft evening air and said the final truth he needed to say. You didn't just save my life, Talia. You gave it back. She smiled through tears. You gave us ours too. The wind carried their words into the fading light as the waves rolled gently below them. 2 broken souls. Stitched together by kindness. Healing together. Living again. Side by side.